Hello everyone, we are live again with new session of Bootcamp, and today we are going to cover AWS Cognito for user management for every kind of sign up, sign in, and all the details of user onboarding. That's what we are going to cover today. Sazia, do you want to add anything?
I just wanted to say that in every application, usually you have a sign up and sign in. And what we do is in each time we do it again, and again. So and of course, there's a question of scalability as well. The good thing is that Cognito is based on JWT tokens, which we'll discuss later. These tokens basically are web standards. And in these tokens, you can also incorporate multi-tenant SaaS applications, which is our ultimate target. So therefore, Cognito is a very comprehensive solution of authentication or an authorization. Its main competitor is basically Google Firebase authentication, which is totally free. But the thing is that Google has been left a little bit behind in serverless, technologies. So therefore, Cognito is, I prefer Cognito in the sense that it gives you access to all the resources of AWS. And it seems right now, Google has been left behind, and it is basically a two company horse race in cloud with Azure and AWS. So therefore, we are, as we have done most of the solutions of AWS with authentication and authorization, we will also use Cognito. Zeeshan, over to you.
Okay, so Waris will start with the initial information of the Cognito and the example.
Okay, so hi guys, how's it going? So in the last class, we learned how to. We actually finished off with AppSync, and we saw how to use DynamoDB as a data source. We did it using VTL, and then we also did it using predefined functions. And then we also saw how to use AppSync with no data source. The only thing that was left was HTTP as a data source, and we will see that later when we will study Event Bridge. So coming to today's topic, that is Cognito. So Cognito is basically an AWS service that allows you to authenticate, authorize, and manage users in your application. So basically, if you want people to sign up and sign in your application, then this is the service that you're looking for. So it has a lot of different features that you can use, and one of the great features is that you can actually use third-party identity providers with it, like Facebook, Google, and Amazon. So another challenge is how to, if you initialize your Cognito, it's going to be in your backend, but the question is how to use it in your front end. So there are basically two main methods to do that. The first one is to use Amplify. So Amplify has a very good extensive library to use Cognito on your front end. It also has some UI components that are very, very easy to use. And yeah, so it's very user friendly. The other option is to use a hosted UI. So basically, Cognito provides you a hosted UI, and by hosted UI, I mean that it provides you a separate URL that has a sign up and login form in it. And let me actually show you how does it work. Let me actually share my screen. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Oh, okay, cool. I'm going to make a small diagram to explain it. So basically, the two ways. Let me repeat that again. Step one is to use Amplify. First method, Amplify libraries and UI components. Okay, so in this method, usually your login and sign up form would be inside your application. Okay. This is your application. If you want your login and sign up page, sign up form inside your application, then you have to use the first method, that is the Amplify libraries and UI components. Now the other method is using a hosted UI. Now this is provided by Cognito itself. You obviously have to configure it. On this method, the workflow is a bit different. So this is your application, and you may have a login button over here. And this is the hosted UI. UI for sign up, sign in, and this would have a form. This is your sign up login form. Okay. Now, when the user would click on the login button, he would be taken out of your. He would be redirected to this link. This is a separate link now. Now he has gone out of your application to this link, and then he would enter his details over here. Wait. Yeah, he would enter his username and password over here. Then he will click the login button, and whenever he would click the login button, he would be redirected back to your application. And how does this page know that way to redirect? We actually configure it with some callback URLs, and when this will redirect back to your application, it will pass some extra information in the form of query parameters. So when you're going to redirect back over here, you're also going to receive some extra code over here, and you can actually use this code to get the user information and user tokens. Now, getting user tokens and information from this code can also be automated using Amplify libraries, but you can also do it manually. So we have shown you both the ways in this repository. So that was a basic overview. So basically, there are two ways to connect it to your front end. Now let me close that. Now, before diving into the CDK, I would actually like to show you the console of Cognito. Okay, so you can see basically there are two different things in Cognito. The first thing is the user pools that I've been talking about. So user pool are basically responsible for signing in, signing up, and managing users, and all the hosted UI. But the identity pools are a bit different. They are basically responsible for configuring third-party identity providers with your user pool, and they're also responsible for giving access for different AWS services to your user pools and users. So I'm going to be focusing more on the user pools right now. Identity pools come later. Okay, so let's open up a user pool. So first, I would like to show you how do we actually create a user pool using the console, because the coding is not that hard. We have seen how to create a stack. It's not that hard. So let me just show you, because there are so many parameters involved in Cognito. I just want to show you from the console. So I'm going to select a name first. Step through settings. So you can see there are a variety of settings that you can set in your user pool, and be mindful that most of these parameters are not mutable. So you cannot change them once you've defined them. So like if you want to change them, you actually have to make.
Could you please zoom it a little bit more?
Okay. Sorry. Is it good enough?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. So as you can see, there are a lot of parameters over here, and most of them are not mutable. So if you like intend to change them after you have created your user pool, then you can't. You actually have to create a new user pool, and you would usually have just one user pool per application. Maybe in some very complex applications, you may have more than one user pool. So you can see, first of all, it's asking me how do you want the users to sign in. You can either choose a username, or you can choose email address or phone number, and there are some other settings as well. Then you can see this is a very important one. These are the attributes that you set for when the user signs up, you actually set that what parameters do you expect from the user to enter. So if I like enter email, the user would have to enter the email, otherwise we would not be able to, we would not allow him to sign up. So these are the standard parameters, and if you select them once, they cannot be changed. And you also have some custom attributes, like if you want to add an attribute that you cannot find over here, you can actually put it in your custom attribute. Okay, so let me repeat it again. All these attributes uh, are those that the user has to enter at the time of sign up. Okay, so and then there are some other settings. You can actually set a password policy just to strengthen your password. Like I want the user to enter a password that has special characters, uppercase letters, lowercase letters, minimum length. And do you want to allow users to sign themselves? So this means if I click over here, only allow administrator to create users, then the users can't sign up on their own on your application. Only you can add users in your application. But if I click over here, then users can do it themselves. And these are some settings for changing passwords and temporary passwords that you assign to users when you assign to users as an administrator. Yeah. And then there are some other settings regarding multi-factor authentication. So this is basically sending an OPT or a text message or an email to your user for further authentication. And these are some account recovery settings. And then what attributes do you want to verify? Like when I enter my email at the time of sign up, do I want to verify that? So how does it verify? It actually sends a code to your email, and then you would have to enter that code in your application to verify your email. And there are some settings for sending SMSs. So you can see there's so many settings, there are so many parameters. The good thing is that you can define all these parameters from CDK. I'll show you in a minute how to do that. So then these are the settings for your email, like the email that you want to send to your user, that okay, congratulations, you have signed up, or verify your email or whatever. And then you can actually use SES service as well to send the messages. SES is another service of Amazon that allows you to send messages. This is all about messages. And these are settings for remembering user devices. Now, I will discuss this later. What is an app client? And I will also discuss this later. So you can see I've actually created a user pool, and all the settings that are defined. No, I've not created it yet. Okay, so it's created now. So all the settings that are defined can be seen over here, and you can see they're not mutable. You cannot change them. So you have to be mindful. You have to think very carefully when you're creating the user pool, because if you have a lot of users in this and you want to change these things, then you can't do that. You will actually have to make a new user pool, and you will have to import all the users in that other one. And that's pretty much it. That's how you create a user pool. You can also add users from the console. Let me just quickly do it. You can see it's giving me an error because I have not set up the SMS configuration, so I shouldn't enter my number. If I had set up these SMS configuration when I was creating user pool, then it would not have given me the error. Oh, okay. I think it created the account before. Anyways, okay. Now let's see how can we do all this from CDK. Open the documentation. Now you can see it's very easy to create a user pool. And up till now we have seen many times how to create a stack. The difficult part in Cognito is to define parameters because there are so many of them. So actually they have given, so this documentation is really good. They have explained all the parameters over here. So you can see we can enable self sign up enable. This means that user can sign up themselves. And then we can set some parameters. So you can set some configuration for the email. User invitation, like if you want to add a user yourself as an admin. So all those parameters that we saw in the console, you can you can define them in your CDK. You can see that here. You can see these are the standard attributes that I talked about that cannot be changed. So once you have actually written these and deployed your code, and then you try to change it and deploy it again, you will get an error because I told you that these are not mutable. Okay. Custom attributes are mutable, I think. So this is a whole variety of parameters that you can use. I'm just going to quickly show you a piece of code in CDK. And let's also deploy this.
Wallace, you will have to increase your.
Yeah.
Sorry for that.
Okay. Can you see it now?
Yeah.
Okay. So I took this code from our repository. This is, I think, step number 2. So it just shows you how to make a simple user pool. So again, very simple. In the stack, first you have to define the scope. That is this class, and then the ID, and then these are all the parameters that I discussed about. And I know it's not easy to remember all these parameters. You will have to go to the documentation and write them. But this is just a sample user pool. So it says self sign up enable. This means the users can sign up from your application. Auto verify email means that whenever the user enters their email, they will automatically get a verification code. Sign in alias email to here means that we're not going to use username. We're going to use your email as a username. Okay. And these are just some specifications for the email that would be sent to you. So I've made that, and let's see if it's. Let's wait for it to get deployed, and we can see that the changes would be seen in the console. Okay. I think it's going to take a while. Let me just move on. Okay, so this is the same user pool that I created before. Not this one. This is being created. So the next important thing to understand over here is that what are lambda triggers? So whenever someone signs up, or authenticates their account, an event is generated inside Cognito user pool, and you can actually invoke or attach lambda to those events. And this actually makes Cognito very, very powerful. And you can see there's a wide variety of events that you can attach lambda to. So let's say if I attach a lambda to pre-sign up, I can actually run some logic behind it, and based on that logic, I can decide whether I want to allow this user to sign up or not. Okay. And this actually opens a whole new world of possibilities that you can do with it. This is actually used to make a custom workflow. So for example, in project 15, you can actually on the sign up, you can actually assign a tenant ID to the user, or you can, if you want to send an email to someone else that this user has signed up, you can do that as well. You can do a lot of things. You can literally do anything in the lambda functions. So this is a very powerful tool, I think. Oh, I think it's going to take a while. Okay. So you can either attach lambda functions to your events from here, from the console, and you can do it from the CDK as well. Let me show you how to do it from CDK. So the only thing that you need to add is this parameter. That says, okay, I want to trigger a lambda, but at which event? I'm going to choose this pre-sign up event. You can choose any one of them, right? Just to show you how it works, I'm going to use a pre-sign up one. So that's what I've written over here. And then you have to write the name of your lambda function. So I'm just going to copy the lambda function from here as well. Let's create a lambda function over here. Now let's create the code for lambda. So this function will actually run before the user has completed the sign up process. Okay, this is pre-sign up. trigger. So what is the name of the file? Index. So before explaining you this code, let me just show you how does it work. How does the lambda triggers work? This hasn't even started. Okay. So you can see over here in this diagram, then in this example, in the pre-sign up example, the user pool would send a request to the lambda. The lambda would do some processing and then send back a response to the user pool. And based on that response, the user pool would decide whether I want to accept the sign up process for this user or not. Okay. So it's a two-way communication. You send a request and the lambda sends the response back to the user pool. And based on that response, the user pool does some action. Okay. So in this case, in the pre-sign up trigger, it would decide whether I want to accept this user's sign up request or not. So if I go back to the code, in my lambda function, I'm first of all console logging the event. And the event is that variable in which the Cognito sends all the information. Now this event has two important keys. The first one is the request, and the second is the response. So you have request parameters and you have response parameters. Okay. So here I'm saying that. So you actually in the lambda function, you actually read from the request parameters and you actually change the response parameters, so that when you send back the event to the Cognito, it can make a decision. Okay. So here I'm saying that, okay, in the response parameter, the auto confirm user parameter in the response, just make it true. And this means that just accept the user without confirming anything. Okay. I just want to confirm every user who signs up. This is what this means. And then I'm also reading the request user attribute, and I'm saying if this user has entered an email, then auto verify that email as well. And if this user has entered a phone number, then auto verify that phone number as well. So this is important to know that we're only changing the response parameters and we're reading from the request parameters. Now these parameters, I think they are only these are only for the pre-sign up trigger. Different triggers would have different parameters, and then you will have to configure them accordingly. So in this case, we are only changing the response parameters so that every user gets accepted, whoever tries to sign up, and then we return this event back to the Cognito. Okay, it is important to know we're not only returning the response, we're returning the entire event. We made some changes in the event, and we're returning the event back to the Cognito. Okay, not sure what's going on here. Let me just deploy the entire thing with the lambda trigger. And we can actually verify if the lambda is working or not by going into the CloudWatch and see the logs of that lambda. Now, if I'd make this false, or if I had like put some other logic that I don't want a certain user to be accepted, then the user pool might have rejected some of the users who signed up. Okay, but in this case, I'm just letting everyone sign up. Okay. Yeah, but the flow remains the same for all the triggers. You send a request to the lambda and it returns the response. Let me just delete this. In the next step, we'll see how to actually connect this Cognito with our front end. And I'm going to show you this step one. And so Zeeshan would be covering these steps. Okay, I think it's done. Yep, it's done. So if I go to the triggers, you can see this has already been configured with the new lambda function that we made. Just zoom in. Okay. And now this means that if I make a new user, then it should run the lambda function. Let me also open my lambda function. And let's test it. So you can see I'm actually logging the event over here. So we will be able to see if it's working or not. Now let's create a user. So right now I'm creating user from the console. Ideally, you would need to do that from your front end. Okay. So now if you remember, I in my application, in my CDK code, I wrote that my sign-in alias is email. This means I cannot enter a username now. My username should be a form of email. Okay. So if I like enter a normal username, it should give me an error. Let's see. Do we have any email? Okay. We shouldn't even enter the phone number as well. Okay. Let's try to sign in. Oh, okay. So you can see username should be an email. So I'd have to enter the email over here. To work fine. Okay. So it's created. Now it should have actually run the lambda first before creating it over here. Let's see. So you see we have one log over here. And you can see it console logged the entire event. So we had some request parameters and we had some response parameters. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So we actually, from our lambda, we actually configured, we said that, okay, I want every user to be signed up. And that's why it has been signed up over here. And yeah, that's it. Now let's try to connect it with our front end. Let me first show you what are we going to use for our front end. So I'm using a separate code now, and there's a reason for that. I'm going to tell you that later. But you can see this is another user pool with slightly different parameters. Okay. So you can see account recovery. We are saying we can only recover account through email, self sign up enabled, user verification only through email, auto verify. This means that whenever we're going to enter our email in the sign up, it's going to send us the code automatically. And then we also set some standard attributes. This means that we need email and phone number from the user when they sign up. Okay. If they don't enter either of these, then we're not going to allow them to sign up. Now, the next important thing to understand over here is that we have also created a user pool client. Now, you always need a client whenever you want to connect your application with, whenever you want to connect your user pool with your front end application, or whenever you want to connect it with your third party identity provider. Okay. Now, for now, we have not defined any parameters in the client, because this is a very simple example. But in the later example, you will see that we also have to configure a few parameters in the client. For now, we have only referenced our user pool in the client. This means that this client belongs to this user pool, and we actually need, and we are printing out, and we are actually printing out the IDs of user pool and client because we would be needing them on our client side. Okay. So you can see this is the authentication Amplify authentication library. It is very similar to Firebase and Netlify identity. So it actually provides you an entire library, but the easier way is to use UI components. You can see it actually gives you React components that you can use. So it's more like a widget. So it's like a widget. It's a form in which you can just enter your username and password, and it will do everything for you. So we're going to use this. Okay. So let me just first quickly deploy it. This is our backend. This is just a simple user pool with a user pool client, and that's it. Now let me show you my front end. Well, it's a Gatsby project. Okay, so it's an empty Gatsby project. Let me just quickly get the code from here. Now this is the easiest way you can implement the front end. This is the easiest way. So because we're using Amplify, we need to do all those things, that wrap root element and all that. But the most important thing is this file, AWS exports.js. Now, if you remember previously we were using AppSync, so we had to write the parameters for AppSync. But in this case, we're using Cognito, so we only have to define the parameters for Cognito. If you're using both of them, then you have to define parameters for both of them. Okay, so I'm just going to copy this. And paste this. Oh, let's wait for it. Now, because I only have one page in this application, I'm not going to make all that wrap root element and all that. I'm just going to configure directly over on this page. But in the repository, you will see that we have actually made a wrap root element, and that's the recommended way. Okay, so I'm just gonna. Copy this code and paste it in my index.js page. So these are the two libraries that we are going to be using from Amplify. I think I might have already installed them. So both of these libraries are related to the UI components that I showed you. And I also need to import Amplify. So this is not a very good practice, but I'm just doing it to save some time. You would actually put this in a wrap root element. Okay. Now let's see if our app has been. Okay. Now I'm going to copy my client ID and paste it in my config file. That was client ID. Client ID goes here. It's very, very simple to configure. And user pool ID goes here. And my region goes here. That is US 1. Okay, now that's done. Let's copy this entire thing. Let's make it TSXY. Okay, now let me explain you the code. So you can see this is this function on auth UI state change. Now this function is provided by the library, and it fires every time there's a change in state of your UI or the user, whether the user has logged in or logged out, or if it's loading. It's triggered every time there's a change in the state. Okay, and this gives you two parameters. The first one is tells you the state, like if it's logged in, if the person is logged in, logged out. Let me just show you the. So you can see it returns you two parameters. The first one is auth state, that is an enum, and that actually tells you the state of the user, whether the person is signed in, logged out, signed in, or it's loading, confirm sign in. So this is the one that we're getting over here. And then there's auth data. This is the user data. I mean, all the data associated with the user, like the username, the tokens, the access token, the refresh token, everything. Let me actually console log it. So okay, so we are saving this data in the user state. So I'm going to console log the user state. If okay. Let me also import.
This Amplify library is installed globally or for this project?
Only for this project. Yeah. So basically, up till now, I've only discussed this one function that returns you two things, the state and the data for user. But the weird thing is that this function doesn't work unless and until you use this and this in your application. So this is like the widget I was talking about. So this is just like a sign up and sign in form that you can use as a React element, and this is the sign out button. And this function is actually connected to these two components. And it's, if you don't want to use these, you can actually use the Amplify library, and there are some other functions as well that you can use. We have discussed them in the later steps, but this is the easiest way to do it. Okay. So whenever the state of this authenticated changes, this function is going to get fired, and it's going to tell us the state of the user, whether he's logged in, logged out, or whatever, and the data of the user. Okay. And so here I'm saying that if the user is signed in and there's some information in the user state, which is the user data, we're saving it over here, then show me the username of the user. Okay. So as I told you before, this data that is being saved in the user has all the information about user, and one of the parameters is username. So I'm just saying, just show me the username if the person is logged in, and also show me the sign out button that is provided by Amplify. And if that is not the case, if the person is not logged in, then show me the sign in, sign up form. Okay. Now let's try to run it. There's an error. Okay. Oh, you have two returns. Okay. Let's try to run this. Now I will actually show you why did I define these two attributes over here. So while that's loading, I can actually go through the documentation. So this documentation is just for the UI. And if you want the entire library for authentication, you can come over here. You can actually use, there are a lot of other functions to sign in and sign out and to detect the state of the user. Okay. Okay, I think it's about to run. They have it's actually given you a lot of code, the recommended usage. You can even just copy paste it. I hope we don't have an error.
Paris, students are requesting that you are going too fast.
Oh, okay. Like, am I speaking fast or am I explaining it too fast?
Both.
Okay. I get that a lot. So okay, so this is basically the widget that I was talking about, Amplify Authenticator. So right now we are not logged in, that's why it's showing this. And you can I don't have an account yet, so I'm going to create an account. Now the reason why let me zoom in. The reason why I actually chose this attributes over here is because by default you can by default it only gives you four fields: username, password, email, and phone number. So if I had chosen something else like an address over here, then I would not have been able to sign up using this widget. So a workaround for this problem is that you can actually add custom fields. If you go into the documentation, you can see that you can actually add custom fields to this widget. So if you want to add if you want to add some more standard attributes, you can actually add fields for that in this widget. So I just kept it simple because I didn't want to change anything and I didn't want to waste any time. And if I remove this, even then there's a problem because we will be entering a phone number over here. So that's again a problem. So if you wanted to work in the default state, then you have to go with this configuration at the backend. But obviously you can add and remove fields from this widget using using this. I think, yeah, you can come to the documentation and have a read. It's not that hard. So let me just sign up. I had a random number. So it should send me a code now. Let me have a look. It's 382629. Okay. Okay, so I'm signed up, and it's saying hello world is over here. Why? Because we're actually showing the username of the sign-in user. Okay, and it's also showing a sign out button that was provided to us by the Amplify library. Now I have also console logged the user, the data that is coming for the user, and you can see over here. Let me see if I can zoom this in. You can see it's giving us all the data for the user, the email, phone number, and also gives us the priority. Wait. It also gives us the tokens. Let me see, where are they? Yeah, so here we go. We have access token, ID token, refresh token. You can use them. And it gives us the username as well. Where's the username? No, it should be, yeah, here it is. So it gives you all the information about the user. So and it's very easy to use. Okay. So I can actually log out, and it takes me back to the widget. So that's a very easy way of integrating Cognito with your front end. Let me actually go to the user pool and see if I've signed up or not. This is the one. Yeah, here you go. It's enabled and it's confirmed. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And yeah, I just forgot one thing. You can also create groups. So I can create a new group. You can do all this using yeah. You cannot create groups using CDK. You can only do it using SDK inside a lambda function, or you can do it using console. Okay. So one. Yeah. So this is not a part of CDK. You can do it using SDK inside a lambda function, and then you can also add users inside a group. So right now we only have one user. I'm going to add that user inside this group. Yeah. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. Yeah, I think that covers everything regarding basics of Cognito. Yeah. Yeah. Over to you, Sir Zeeshan.
Okay, so now what we need to discuss is basically what Waris has explained to us is related to the sign up and sign in with the custom user ID, email, or password, so that you can use your custom user ID and password to sign up and sign in within your application. The important part is that to do this sign up and onboarding process, it requires too much of security. It requires too much of implementation to manage. Let's say Varis just sign up with the email, phone number, and everything, and it just send code to Varis on Varis email account, and then Varis input that code. So email verification process was included in this process. And if you want to use the forget password, reset password, and everything, so these steps are already being done by the AWS for us. We just have to the configuration Varis showed us for the server and the client. Again, if you want to do implement a standard UI, then you can use the widgets provided by the Amplify. Otherwise, you can do with your API, just call the API and use your UI. But the important part is sign up. User will be registered in the user pool, and you will receive a code on your email, and it will verify your email. So if you're trying to go with this implementation by yourself, it definitely require a hell of a job. Now, the another part is when you are working with the external providers, like if you want to do a sign up with Google, if you want to do a sign up with Facebook, Apple, or Amazon itself, or if you have any other custom third party sign up provider which you want to use for to sign up inside your application. Now the biggest problem is when you are working with external provider. Let's say you want to give the implementation for the Google, Facebook, and Facebook. Let's say stick. Then you have to explore both of these libraries separately. So how you will be implementing Google sign up and how you will be implementing Facebook sign up. So you need to explore both of the libraries separately. You need to stay up to date with both of these libraries separately. The good thing about Cognito provider, external provider, is the Cognito, the AWS. What AWS did is it has given us a standard way of interacting with the external providers. So you will be using a standard template. Either it is a Facebook, either it's a Gmail, either it's an Apple. The good thing is you will be interacting with Cognito. You will be using attributes related to the Google, but inside the Cognito objects. And the inside implementation, how it will go and connect to the Facebook, or how it will go and connect to the Google or an Amazon or an Apple, it's hidden to us. So it will give, generally it will give a quite relief when you want to integrate multiple external providers, let's say Google and Apple or a Facebook. So that's the biggest relief. And I have experienced this. One of my application had the Facebook user authentication. Initially I was trying to avoid the register user by myself in my database, so I was using the Facebook. So first of all, you need to keep update the library. If library get deprecated, you need to update your library. Facebook keeps sending me messaging that we need to verify this. We need uh, the library is being updated. You need to update your code. All these things that will be done behind the scene by the AWS, and we just will be focusing on the Cognito, that how we need to do with the Cognito. So that's a very important part and very interesting in case of when you are using the external user. Now coming to our example that we need to focus is the third one, as Wadi showed you how you will be configuring the Cognito with Amplify. We need to talk about the example 03 Google login. So the most of the part will be remain the same as Wadi showed us. So I'll keep that part as it is, and I'll just use the explain you the what is the difference. Okay, so first of all, let me just go to, I created the standard backend. There is nothing else inside this backend, and the basic installation, nothing else. So it's empty. Now what we need to do is, you can see complete explanation and the links for how you will be creating your, because you also need to understand that whenever you are using the third party sign in process, let's say Google, Facebook, or Apple, then you need to have your account or a developer account or developer app on that particular service as well. So in case in this example we are going for the Google account, so we must have a account or a project inside the Google developer console. If you will be using the Facebook, then you need to create an app inside the Facebook developer account, so then you can use it. I'll show you that in a moment. That's that's your developer console. I'll show you. And same goes for the client. Okay, so let's stick to this. And first of all, as Varis already showed us, that we need to create a user pool. Let me install the Cognito first. So this user pool concept has already been explained by Varis. We need the self sign-in, recovery by email, user verification. It should be send the email as a code. Auto verify and standard attribute is an email. So this portion is as it is, which we have used in previous examples by Varis. So it will remain the same. We don't have to worry about this. Okay. Now, next part is important. It says create user pool identity provider. So what Cognito did is AWS and Cognito dot user pool identity provider, Amazon, Facebook, Google, and there is an identity provider. So if you want to do custom, so they have given us a function for the Google, Facebook, Amazon, and I guess they have also given us for the Apple. I can't see over here. So you just need to use this object and the property required with this object. You do not have to worry about how it is being implemented behind the scene, how it will go to the Google and open up a page and everything. So what you need to provide is, as we have seen multiple times, first we need to provide the context, then the ID, and then the properties. These properties are important. That first of all, as we have previously seen, we need to specify user pool. So which user pool we are connecting with this provider. Then client ID, that's your Google developer client ID and Google developer secret ID. I'll show you how we'll get that. Attribute mapping, what attributes, now that's what I was saying, that we are using standard properties, and Cognito has provided us. So cognito.provider attribute Google email, and it is accessing as email. So if you will be using Facebook, so you will say cognito.provide attribute Facebook email, Facebook given name, Facebook phone number. So you will have a standard implementation. Just change the Facebook, Google, or Amazon, and then the other implementation will remain the same, and it will be handled by the what you say Cognito, and you do not have to worry about. So we are mapping email, name, and phone number, and the scope. It's all the external providers like Facebook, Google, and Amazon. Whenever you want to connect with them, you want to specify that what properties or what information you will access from them. So we are saying that we will access the profile information, we'll access the email, and we'll access the open ID. These properties are different for each one. So for Facebook, it might be a different, it might be a profile underscore user or user underscore profile, and the open ID will be something else. So that's the difference thing. You need to learn what Facebook called them. So for us, it will be simple. And then you need to register with user pool dot add identity provider. So you'll connect both of them, the provider and the user pool. So I'll copy this. Okay, so provider new Cognito user pool identity provider Google. Give it any name. Let's it as we have given name it here. We can say my user pool for Google provider for my pool. These properties we need to find out where we will have it. Just let me show you provider dot. You can see Facebook email. So if you will be logging with trying to connect with the Facebook, you just have to change this user pool identity Facebook, and you will provide this Facebook email property. So it will access the Facebook property. So that's how you will be. It will be easy for you to connect. Either you are working with the Facebook or Gmail. It will be standard implementation. Okay, once done this, user pool dot registered identity provider, and then provide. So they both are connected to each other. Provider has user pool has a provider, so they both are connected with each other. Third thing is which Varis also explained us. What we need to do is we need to create a user pool client. So whenever you want to connect from the client side, from the browser based application or a mobile based application, you want to connect to your user pool. So you need to create user pool client, and you need to provide the pool over here, and you need to provide the callback URL. So what whenever it returns some page, so which page it goes to. So we need to specify this by creating user pool as we have done in the previous example. Cognito.user pool client, name it anything, my amplify client. And as we'll be testing it at the localhost, so we'll keep it as a localhost. So we have provided the user pool. At this moment, previously in the previous example, it was a simple. It was not accessing with some what you say third-party provider. So we do not need to specify the callback URL, but in this case, we need to provide because it's an auth. So we are authenticating with some auth standard library. Once done this, now that's important part. Other properties are just for the output, so we do not have to worry about them. One thing I want to mention this, the CNF output user pool client ID project region. You cannot use console.log here. Otherwise, user pool.client user pool client ID. You might think that I can show this directly over here. I'll be using this to just show the output on the console. So this will give you the null or a nothing or a promise. It will not give you an actual output because this code will get registered to the cloud formation. Cloud formation will run the stack. It will create the things, and once things are being registered or created, then it will output you to the client. So that's why this console will get passed and it will not display anything. So that's why we cannot do console.log to output anything. It's just showing the output, so you do not have to worry about. We need to create to specify domain. Now this domain is whatever the name we will give.
Zeeshan, I think the reason is because the tree has not been constructed yet.
Yeah, that's what I was.
The logic tree.
That's what I was saying.
The CDK.
Yes.
Go ahead.
You were saying something.
Yeah, I was just saying the tree has not been constructed. The tree of all the components. And the graph has not been constructed. Therefore, if you print something, it will be either null or a future promise.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. That because they are just registered and the process is in progress, so it will not be display anything on the console, either null or, as you said, the promise of future. Okay, now we need to specify the domain, as we are using the external provider. So for that, we need to specify the domain so that what the URL of your authentication, Cognito authentication URL, what domain should be. Let's say hello dot, it will be hello dot AWS something, anything. I'll show you in a moment. So whenever you are working with the third-party libraries, it will need some URL. So that's what Cognito did is, Cognito has a standard URL, your region, AWS dot awscognito.com. So we have plenty of applications. So the prefix will be our domain name. So once we'll see that, then you will understand what it is. So let's say I'll call it my dash app. My dash app. That's my domain name. That's my domain. And that's what we have created. That's the simple thing. Now what we need is, we need these two properties, client ID and secret. For that, what we need to do is we need to go to the developer console, Google developer console. If you are using with the Facebook, you are working with the Facebook, then you need to go to the developer.facebook console. From here, what you can do, as you can see, it will, as I have already few projects, so it has started directly with the initial project. Otherwise, there will be an empty page and you will not see anything. So what you can do is click, I'll just click a new project, and you can give my demo project or whatever name you want to give it. Create. So it will create a project for you. So you can move to the particular project, and then you can go to the credentials. These information, this information is already given in over here in our step number 03 backend. So you can see how you'll be creating, or there are details available. Let's say if you go to this link, it will show you the steps you need to do for the social login. So if you're working Facebook, then this is Facebook, Google. So they have given you all the steps. You can follow these steps individually. I have just shown you how I'll be using this. At this moment, I'll use my existing project. And I'll go to credential. And inside credential, we have a button here, click credential, create credentials. I'll click on the create credentials or auth client ID. Auth is a standard now. It's been a standard, and you will see everywhere. So whenever you want to connect with your with the any external provider, so there is a standard specification of authentication of for sign up with any external provider. So select your type of application. So I'm selecting web application. Name it anything. Just keep it web client 3. Then you need to provide URL of your what you say, the Cognito URL. So if I skip it, it will not give me a name. So at this moment, we need to specify both of them, but I'll show you. Once I'll create this, because it's kind of a egg and chicken problem. You need to specify the URL over here to get this client ID and secret. If you do not provide the client ID and secret here, so your stack will not create it, and you will not get the Cognito URL. So what kind of URL it will be? So let's say your client ID. Copy this. Paste over here. Your client secret. So we are done. We have created user pool. Then we created the Google identity provider, and we have specified the client ID and client secret. We have specified the domain, so it's my app. You can give any domain name. We have created the pool and just the output. Once we'll run this, it will give us few outputs: the user pool client ID, the region, the user pool ID, and the domain name. Domain name will be this exactly same, so we do not have to. But the important thing is it will create the user pool, and it will create us the Cognito hosted URL. As you can see here, we have already mentioned in the repository and README. So you can see this. So your URL will always be like this: domain prefix .auth .your region .amazoncognito.com. This URL you need to provide inside this credential. Okay, credential I have just created. So either you can assume that will be the URL and provide this, or wait for the deployment of your stack. It's your choice. So let me show you. So I'll pick this URL, go to this identity, and I'll just replace the domain name, which is my app. And I'll pick this. Redirect URL. Also replace my app over here. Once done, we can save this. Now what I'll do is I have to deploy this stack. Okay, once it's being deployed, so once it's done, now we need to connect with the client. So for client, that's domain already associated with another user pool. Associated with another user pool. So let me. Now, as Varis mentioned, as how we'll be connecting with the from the Amplify client to our backend. But in case of the previous example which Varis showed us, we need to create the widget for sign up and sign in. But in our case, in case of a Google or Facebook, Google, Facebook, or Apple provide us the widget or page. So we do not have to create that page. We just have to specify the information in the client side, and it will be redirected to the Google page or Facebook page. I'll show you in a moment. So these are the properties we have, and you need to see that in case of my user has an region has US West 2. Okay. Now what we need to do is we need to work with the client so that we can show the Google login page. For that, again, I have created the basic structure of this code. It has nothing but Gatsby starter project and nothing else inside it. So we have this SRC and there's nothing else. Okay, now I'll call the amplify init inside it. So it will be amplify project so that we can use amplify serve and amplify deploy and everything. It will ask what you need, what you want to name it. So let it the default name, keep the default name dev. I'll be using Visual Studio, JavaScript, React. My source directory is SRC. My build directory is public. Gatsby build. Asking the build command. So whenever you call the build, it will use the Gatsby build. Develop. This is the reason when I'll call the amplify serve, so it will run the Gatsby develop. So I don't have to worry about the what the command will be related to the Gatsby. I'll just use the amplify. Okay, now it's setting up. Well, let's go for the client side. So what we need to do for the client. For the client, we need to use the AWS Amplify, which Varis has showed a moment ago. And the interesting thing is Amplify Hub. That's very interesting part of Amplify. What Amplify Hub does is basically because Amplify is combining few things: authentication, hosting, data storage, and everything. So whenever you want to communicate with each these services, so Amplify Hub is in a event system. So what it does is whenever you fire or there is an event is being fired, Amplify Hub listen to it, and if you are listening over here on this Amplify Hub, uh, if you register your listener, then it will give you that event and you can manage that. So as you can see, so there, yes. So in our case, once authentication is done, we need to do something. So that's, as you can see, hub.listen auth. So Amplify is in a CLI. There is an auth service. There is an, we have a list over here. Core, auth, API, analytics, interaction, pub sub, storage. These are the different services. So you want to listen authentication listener, that if authentication is being done, sign up is done, sign out is being done. So the hub provides you the standard way to handle your listeners, and you can then provide all the implementation. So these are the information also available over here. What we need to do is we need to configure our AWS mobile, the configuration, which also Varis has showed us. And then we need to listen to this sign in. If sign is done, register the user, sign out is done, display the user, sign up failure, everything. And whenever we click the sign in or sign up button, so it needs to be open a Google page, because authentication is being done with the Google, not with the R system. So it will open up the Google page, Google sign up page. Okay, so first of all, I need to install AWS Amplifier. I need to install both of these, so I'll install them. And because I have created done with this, so AWS export, it has a basic information. Now what we need to add is we need to specify, that's our project region, which is already being specified. We need to specify Cognito region. In case of AWS, you need to understand that some services are region specific. So if you have created that specific in a particular region, so to use that service, you need to specify for that service region as well. So you might be using some other region for Amplify, and might be using some other region for Cognito. Depends. Generally, you don't do that, but you can do. That's a possibility. Then you need to specify the user pool ID and user web client ID, which we have outputted over here, but you can check them inside the what you say, a user interface as well. I haven't showed you the Cognito pool. Let me just show you. So as you can see, my user pool for Google, and you have these information. Your pool, you do not have any user at this moment. Client, that's the client ID we have seen over here. And the client, inside the client setting, you have launch hosted UI. If I'll click on this, now you can see my app.domain.auth.us.cognito.com. That's what I was saying, that this is the URL. Once you deploy your stack, this URL will generate it, but it will always be the postfix will always remain this auth.region Amazon Cognito, and the prefix will always remain this. Okay, so now we need to pick this, not complete, we just need another portion, and replace over, add over here. We need user pool ID, which is available here, AWS user pool ID. We need user pool client ID, which is also available here. We need to specify Cognito domain, the domain which we have created, the URL reader. At this moment, we are working at the localhost. So you just need to specify localhost. When we will be in production, then you will be using the base original URL of your hosting. Now for the domain, what you need to do is you need to specify this full domain. Except for the protocol, you will not specify the protocol here, otherwise it will give you error. So except for the protocol, you will specify your domain, and you are done with this configuration. Now what we need to do is we need to do a bit of UI so that it will work for us. Okay, so is as well from here instead of, so we'll call the AWS hub. It's listener. Okay, I'll explain it what it is doing. Inside the use effect, so whenever page gets loaded, we need to set the user. It will use effect will work, and hub.listen will register the authentication listener. So whenever user gets signed in or user gets signed out, we'll receive these events to sign in or Cognito hosted sign in. That will call us ours get user function. If it's sign out, it will cause our use set user and provide the null. If it's an error, so it will show something on the console. Then we need to, that's the, either you call the auth.current authentication user here directly, or you provide this inside a function, so it will be easy to work. So you can do this, or to save this implementation, you can call it this way. I need to import AWS Amplify Hub and Amplify. And I'll call the Amplify configure here. As we have discussed in previous class as well, Varis has mentioned today as well, that this configuration needs to be done for all pages. At this moment, we are working with the single page, so we can use this over here. Otherwise, we need to use the wrap root element. Okay, so that's done. We need to specify the hub. It's done. Now what we need to do is we need to call, as you can see, we need this button. So auth.federated sign in. So what we need to do is we need to call auth.federated sign in. We need to specify the provider. So if it's a Google provider, then that means it will try to open the page for Google. Obviously, that we have to already register that. So I'll copy this. What we're trying to do is user. If user is available, then display username. And if user is available, then show the sign out button. If user is not available, then show the sign in button. The important part is this code. Let me just show this separately. So on click, we are saying auth.federated sign in and the provider. So when we call this sign in with Google button, it will call the it will request will go to the our server, and we have registered the Google provider to ourselves. It will give a URL to our client, and it will be redirected to the Google page. Okay, so that's done. Let's call the amplify serve. It will build the application and it will run this application. Okay, so use effect is not defined. Okay, so it's done. Localhost colon 8000. again. Once sign up will be done, we'll have a user list over here. So the user we have signed up. So we'll see this. Okay, so it's deployed. Let's try to. Okay, so we have a button sign in with Google, and when I click on it, it will redirect us to the Google login page. Redirect URI mismatch. Okay, so redirect URI is. Oh yes. As I mentioned, my region is US West 2, and the URL I copied, it was the EU West 1. That's why it's the problem. So I need to change this EU West 1. So I need to change to it to my region, US West 2. You need to be more vigilant when you are copy pasting something. Okay, so saving is done. Let's call the login page again. Sign with Google. Again. Auth West 2 does not match to the authorized auth client project number. I guess just a moment. Does not match once authorized with the auth client to update. So domain is done over here. Okay, one more thing. The app name also was different. Okay, so now you can see as I have clicked the sign in button, it has redirected me to account.google.com pages. And once I'll select any of my account, let's say I select my email address, and it will redirect me back to my the URL which I have specified in my implementation. I'll show you, and it's giving the Google name and the sign out button. So what it does is, whatever I mentioned over here inside here. So I say redirect sign in, after sign in where I want to be redirected, after sign out where I want to be redirected. So when I click this sign in button, it redirected me to the Google page. And once I'm done with the sign in, then redirected me back to my application. So that's how you will be using it. And as Waris showed us, that inside the user object, that's the user object we have at the client side. This user object will have the complete information, tokens, and everything. You can see user information here. Now you can see we have a user. It mentioned that it's an external provider, and our user is being registered. It has all the information, provider and everything, the name, given name, the email address, all the details. So the important thing is how you will be using. It's a standard style of identity provider. Either you go for the Google, Facebook, or Amazon. Just you definitely, in case of Google, it's a client ID and secret ID. In case of Facebook, I guess it's an app ID and app secret. So the property you need to provide access, the client pool. This client pool is important if you are trying to access your pool or your user with the client. So as we are doing with the Amplify client, so you need to specify this. That's it. And this URL, the localhost 8000 URL must match to this URL which you specify in redirection. So if they will be different, again there will be an error. So the redirect URL and the URL callback URL, they should also match. So they should be similar. So it's specifying the client URL. So let's say your app is hosted on xyz at hariko.com. So you will specify xyz hariko.com here, and you will also specify xyz hariko.com here as well, so that it matches. So once it is done, you need to specify domain. This name is important, that this is a mapping for your Cognito domain, which we have also specified here as well. And then the same URL we see over here, app.hostname, which we can found inside the hosted UI. So that's pretty much it, so that you can configure your what you say. You need to, if you want to sign up and sign in with an external service, maybe Google or Facebook or everything. So Cognito has done a marvelous job in standardizing the style how you will be using. You will be sign up with the Google and everything. So that's very great thing by them. So this is pretty much it.
Thank you so much, Zeeshan. Must be tired. Have you had your dinner yet?
No, I'll do after.
Okay, it was looking. You are looking weak. You need some bread to and some fruits to buck you up.
Definitely.
Very good job. Very good job. Thank you so very much. See you guys in the next class. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.